Jim traditionally, when he first started on the SCG Tour, was a control mage, but over the last year, he's been more of I would say like a flavor of the month player, where whatever kind of like the hot new deck is, Jim's been a pretty good odds-on player to play it.
Yeah, he's made a very conscientious effort to try and expand his range, and it shows.
Yeah, I guess the saying flavor of the month makes it sound like a bad thing, but I don't mean it that way at all. There's some players that, when a new deck comes out, they are fast to learn it and innovate it, and Jim tends to be on the front of those things.
Right.
So Wild Growth Walker, turn 2 here from Aaron, is shot down by our Vraska Golgari Queen.
And there's honestly a dynamic in this matchup that is not going to favor Barich, in that whenever you're trying to fill up the graveyard, Wild Growth Walker is one of the cards that you want to command the Dread Horde with, because it gains you all the life back. So Barich having Wild Growth Walkers that can hit the graveyard as is a dynamic that is not going to favor Aaron if the game goes long.
Yeah, both players playing Historic Boar Accusers just makes the card Command the Dread Horde that much better, doesn't it?
Right.
So some worries early on. This game, right now, there's no Command the Dread Horde, and until we see one, the game is a mid-range fight, which Aaron should be a modest favorite in.
Yeah, that one's a little close, but yeah.
Yeah, right. I mean, if these were truly the best mid-range Sultai cards to be playing, Aaron would be playing them.
Right.
It's unfortunate the way this game's playing out so far that Jim actually has control of the board. That's a concern.
Right. That is not at all where Jim wants to be.
Jade Light Ranger from Jim. So he sacrificed, floated mana, sacrificed a land to Vraska to draw a card. He's pretty land flooded here is what's going on.
Right, and this Paradise Druid is a tip-off as to what's going on, but there's also a case to think that this may just be a traditional Sultai deck with a mana dork in it.
Yeah. I like what Jim's decision there. Normally when you want more action, you would keep a spell on top, like Jade Light Ranger, but Jade Light Ranger only draws more lands, and that's kind of the last thing Jim wants, so...
Right.
He did put it in the graveyard.
Mm-hmm. And, this Godless Shrine is absolutely just going to also let the cat out of the bag.
Okay, yeah, the 4th color. Yeah, this isn't a Sultai deck, this is 4 color.
Right, like there's a point, maybe this Druid is instead of Incubation Druid or something like that.
And I know, and I know that you work on decks with Aaron. I'm assuming she's enough up on the metagame that would have the read on this.
Right, yeah, absolutely. We've talked at length about the way that I vibrate whenever I see the card Command the Dread Horde.
A trade with Branchwalker and Jade Light Ranger. Vraska's Contempt takes care of Vraska. Bit of a Vraska has some self-contempt there. But the board is clear.
And here's another bonus to putting that Jade Light Ranger in the graveyard, is it guarantees value on this Sorin Bloodlord. Vengeful Bloodlord.
Sorin will animate back Jade Light Ranger. And Jim's top card is Command the Dread Horde. I think he's going to keep that one on
You know
top.
what? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll
That's
leave
the
those.
card. So what do we have right now? We have Wild Growth Walker, Jade Light Ranger, and Branchwalker. Just those 3 feels like... it's already a good to Command the Dread Horde. Maybe he can do better, so maybe he waits, but I'm already pretty interested in just those 3.
Yep, I completely agree. There's a point where, paying 7 life to just get a huge Wild Growth Walker and a bunch of value might be worth it.
I guess Jim, what he wants to do is he first wants this Jade Light Ranger on the board to get traded away.
Ooh,
yeah,
that'd be nice.
Just attack it into whatever Aaron plays.
There's also a point where you might just want to blow the Command the Dread Horde as soon as possible so it doesn't get Thought Erasured.
Well, Thought Eraser's on top of the deck.
Well, who could have seen this coming?
I'm assuming that Aaron is not going to trade Jade Light Rangers, given the opportunity.
It's close, but you know what?
But absolutely not.
Probably, yeah. But, not in a million years, no.
Yeah. Thought Erasure is milled. 3/2 Jade Light. And Aaron passes the turn back over to Jim. It's a mid-range fight. Both players' life total is still very high here.
Which is pretty good when you're planning to pay life equal to the converted mana cost of things to put them onto the battlefield.
Yeah, it does not sound too bad. A plus from Soren. And he'll offer the trade. Aaron immediately says no.
You know what? Let's go to 14.
Yeah, that's fine.
I've made up my mind.
And Jim will still command the Dreadhorde here. So, we have Wild Growth Walker.
All right, down to 17.
Yeah.
Up to 28, or up to 26. And also explore 3 times.
Yeah, that's fine. That seems reasonable. So 1, that one was the Branch Walker. So now we do Jade Light Rangers. 2, Jade Light Rangers. 3, oh, there's a Tameo on top. Yeah.
Wow.
That
You know
seems
what?
nice. Keep it there.
Think we can go ahead and just get another Command the Dreadhorde in a moment.
How does Aaron make this stop?
That's a great question.
Okay, I suppose, like, well, there's one way you can make it
Yeah,
stop.
the way to make it stop favorably is pretty rough in the main deck, because the thing about Tameo is
Yeah.
it also turns off Thought Erasure.
Hydroid Crisis. Well, I was going to say if you pick up your cards, then it stops.
Oh, yeah. The nice thing about Hydroid Crisis is it is a way to pressure Planeswalkers.
Yeah, that's true. And so that's cast on Aaron's side. And Tameo is the draw here for Jim.
There's a point where something like Ugin the Ineffable could end up clogging the battlefield to a point where Aaron can maybe eventually mount an attack.
Right. Right now, Jim does not have any removal for the Hydroid Crisis. But it's still pretty appealing for him just to attack all these creatures into Hydroid Crisis. And
Right.
let what happens happen.
Yeah, there's definitely a point where the 4/3 Jade Light Ranger at the very least has a near free attack.
So Jim picked up Tameo this turn. Tameo, the Collector of Tales, which can, with 5 loyalty, it actually can take a hit off the Hydroid Crisis. So you either can +1 it twice, or you can buy back a card.
We are an attacking deck.
And here's a full swing. All right, and they do have lifelink, so not too bad to attack. You know, even with the Crisis, it doesn't really stop once Tameo gets on it, because Tameo immediately buys back Command the Dreadhorde.
Right.
And Command the Dreadhorde buys back the
Tameo.
Oh, that's really
yeah.
fun.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
It
it is
just doesn't stop. Yeah.
Yeah, it is a nice combination.
Aaron would need something like Ashiok. Or, I don't even know. Goodness.
Well, don't forget the ones that go to Aaron's graveyard don't get Ashioked.
Okay. This is a tough one. Okay, there's...
That's the problem with the mirror. I was trying to think of ways
Yeah.
to break it and then realized my own cards stay in the graveyard.
This mirror sounds really weird.
It's
Maybe
nice.
it's just all about drawing Command the Dreadhorde, isn't it?
It's about Command the Dreadhorde and Teferi. You respond to their Command the Dreadhorde with your own Command the Dreadhorde.
Ooh, I like this. Okay. I'm in.
It is nonsense.
And the play from Jim was a full swing, then a cast Tameo. Tameo buys back Command the Dreadhorde, and Aaron has had enough. Game 1 goes over to Jim. This was the fear when we saw the deck lists on paper, is that both players would spin their wheels and make some value plays for 5 or 6 turns, and then Jim would do silly things.
Yeah, the decks are doing very similar things. The big differences are basically, do you want Vivian and Fine Finality, or do you want Command the Dreadhorde and Tameo? Otherwise, they're pretty similar in the way that they function with the Explore package and kind of spinning their wheels while setting up these card advantage engines. And unfortunately, you know, the Sultai deck's advantages are just kind of incremental, whereas the Dreadhorde deck has a giant, big, splashy card.
So looking at Aaron's sideboard, she has some actually good options here. Is it bad enough that she needs to reach for these Unmoored Ego?
I would end up likely bringing those in, just even if it feels pretty bad, that's just knowing that you can't, quote unquote, get got by the.
Yeah, and you're just naming Command the Dreadhorde.
Right. You just have to name Command the Dreadhorde. The Elder Spell is another one that I'm looking to bring in just on the back of the fact that it is one of the ways that you can catch back up post Elder Spell.
Yeah, Elder Spell post Command.
Yes.
If they Command the Dreadhorde, you can cast Elder Spell. There's a lot of interest, I like Frilled Mystic here. I don't, I know you're not, I already see it. I know you're not a fan of the card in general. But if it's in your list, it feels like this is a matchup where it can play.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely better than some of the traditional creature removal that you're just trying to get out of your deck. There are some of the other recursive things that you're likely a little bit less interested in than you would normally be.
Yeah. So these are the format really changing with War of the Spark, especially, the Jim's the second Planeswalker deck we said that's very heavy on Planeswalker cards from War of the Spark and on Command the Dreadhorde. You can pick up these cards by ordering War of the Spark, which we have for sale. Well, we have it today over on our website. StarCityGames.com/WAR.
We're going to get this down. We got to, you tie your left leg to my right leg, and we'll practice having to walk everywhere, and then we'll be able to just say go dot.
Yeah.
See, it's too far apart.
See, I remember that in grade school. So I'd always try to do the coordination, right? You and your partner would practice the three-legged race, and then there'd always be the team of the really huge guy who just get the really tiny guy and would just basically grab the other person and then just run, and then just start running.
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, hold on.
Pick them up by the back of their t-shirt.
Yeah. And that was always like, wow, that's cheating.
Listen, adapt, improvise, overcome. Modern problems require modern solutions.
On Jim's side, it's a pretty good matchup. I can't see him wanting to change too much. Is there anything here you'd even change?
You could see something like Finale from Eternity coming in because it's just a big, powerful card and what's eventually going to be a mid-range slog.
Yeah.
You could maybe see his copy of the Elder Spell if you're expecting Barich to try and tank up behind a bunch of Planeswalkers. That one's a little bit less likely. And you could even try to use Duress to preempt Barich's pieces of interaction as well.
Yeah, the Planeswalkers Erin has. She has a mix. It's a 1 Ugin the Ineffable, 1 Liliana Dreadhorde General, 1 Vrasco Golgari Queen, and then the 3 Vivian Reeds. So you'd most likely just get 1 Planeswalker with an Elder Spell, but maybe that's worth it.
Yeah, and that one's kind of tough. If Davis had more Planeswalkers with ultimate abilities, then I'd be more interested in it because there's even a point where you try to set up having a bunch of, we'll say, mopier Planeswalkers, and you blow up your own Planeswalkers to ult yours, like you'll see out of the Grixis decks with Nicol Bolas, Dragon God. But that isn't quite as attractive here.
Yeah, there's not too much on Jim's side that I'd be looking to change. This is a pretty good matchup.
Right. A lot of his cards are going to either be mirror-ish, which is to say that they bounce off of one another, which favors him, or they go way over the top of what Aaron's trying to do, which is good for Jim as well.
Yeah, I could see... Do you see an argument for using those 2 cast down? If one of the ways Jim loses is the folding to an early aggressive draw? Or that's just not how this plays out?
That one's a little tougher. It depends if you're specifically trying to cover those draws or cover the more disruptive draws.
Right.
A lot of times your primary game plan is going to be just fine anyway, so you probably don't want to skew too heavily in one direction and run the risk of calling it wrong. Like if you bring in all these cast downs and all of a sudden Erin is just hitting you with duresses and you're falling too far behind what she's doing, you're going to feel pretty silly. But then on the other hand, not having those kind of clunkier reactive cards in your deck is pretty good when you're in a favored threat-based matchup anyway.
Well, Erin will get another chance at it here in the second game. I think she either wants a very fast start or wants a lot of traded resources.
Yeah, there's a point where if you can tag things like Command the Dreadhorde with that Unmoored Ego we had talked about before, then this is going to be a lot harder for Davis because a good bit of those Planeswalkers aren't so hot at protecting themselves.
Yeah, they're just not as good of mid-range cards at some point, right? a Teferi on Jim's side is a fine card, but he's not actually that good at protecting it.
Right, there aren't that many removal spells. It's good with the cast downs you mentioned before, but outside of that type of scenario, it's not super great.
On Barich's side, she has 4 lands, Vraska's Contempt, and Frilled Mystic, it looks like. We may have a Wild Growth Walker as well. There we go. No blue mana just yet. So that Frilled Mystic, you know, looking, hey, it's the signature to the deck to make that mana's pretty good. Let's make it worse. Mission accomplished. Double Overgrown Tomb into a double blue card.
I'm about to get a nosebleed over here. This is
it's on brand.
Oof, gosh. Of all the things I've seen in my life, this is one of them.
This is one.
I'll tell you.
Look, this turn 6 Frilled Mystic, though, is going to be a good one. Jim actually took a second there to try to figure out whether he wanted to make his own Wild Growth Walker or a Paradise Druid.
That was the second Frilled Mystic off the top.
Well, that's just unbeatable. Erin does not have a third land.
That's rough.
No, she's going to need a few turns to rebuild. Now, yeah, she has a Thought. Yeah, it's holding back the 2 Frilled Mystics and the Thought Erasure at the moment.
Yeah, and it looks like she has a Jade Light Ranger in her hand, so there is certainly a point where
a land's
you're just
fine.
kind of priced into keeping these hands where even if it's missing a single piece, if it's only a land away from being your perfect draw, you're probably supposed to keep it.
Not throwing back 2 Overgrown Tombs, Wild Growth Walker, Jade Light Ranger, no matter, even if there's no blue man, you know, just not doing that.
Right.
Teferi from Jim puts the Wild Growth Walker back in the hand. Not spending that Paradise Druid mana yet, does not want, especially not into something that could be potential cast down mana. And he will pass. Erin looking for that land, she does not find it.
Wild Growth Walker is close.
Yeah, it was the second Wild Growth Walker that was the draw. And Jim already getting ready. Command the Dreadhorde's in his hand. Now the graveyards are not full yet, but he'd love to have something here just like Tameo on the board.
Tameo would be incredible. It looks like he has Wild Growth Walker plus Merfolk Branchwalker.
That's pretty good.
Hard to pass up that kind of power turn.
Yeah, I mean, if Erin doesn't draw lands, Jim doesn't have to do this Command the Dreadhorde combo finish. He can just play a value game plan, and that should be good enough.
Exactly. It's pretty easy to beat a goldfish sometimes, you know?
Yeah. Here is Wild Growth Walker into Branchwalker. 1 counter on. Jade Light Ranger is the top card. Jim deciding if he wants to keep it. I don't know that he has the second green mana.
Yeah, you may just want to say, well, if this Paradise Druid dies, so be it. That's just the world we're living. It'll be okay.
Yeah, and that's what he's doing. Both players know the top card is Jade Light Ranger. And Erin, just another Wild Growth Walker and a pass. This seems like it's too many missed land drops for her.
Yeah.
I don't... No, with 2 walkers, if this was against a mono red deck, I would say, well, a third land here would gain, 12 life. We might be in business. It's not the kind of matchup where that works, though.
Right, and, honestly, there's a point where you see a Vraska, Queen of the Golgari in hand. There is a point where if she rips a blue land this turn and then the Jade Light Ranger finds one in the same turn, we could be back in business here.
Wild Growth Walker into the graveyard, Woodland Cemetery into hand. Wild Growth Walker continues to grow here for Davis. Got his land drop as well. He's going to get to tick that Teferi up to 3 this turn as well. Branchwalker into Sorin. Just got to decide where he wants that one to go.
I guess we'll settle for another Planeswalker in our mid-range fight.
I suppose any Planeswalker here is a keep. I'm trying to figure. I believe he hasn't used Teferi yet.
No.
Swings in with a 3-2, and we're up to a 5-7 Wild Growth Walker. So this swing is for 8, Erin down to 12. Teferi pluses. Everything is going Jim's way. And she finds, there we go.
All right, there's the blue
Harbor.
source. This might be the way back in.
Yeah, she's down to 12, so this Jade Light Ranger will move that back up to 24.
That's a blue land.
A great turn for Erin.
Yeah, no, this is her way back in the game.
Yeah, is it enough? It took a lot of turns to get here. But, yeah, now she's up to, I believe, discarding to hand size.
I believe it's 8 cards.
Yeah, I think we're... I think we're discarding the Frilled Mystics.
Do it. Show
Just
us.
we're so far behind. You can't. She's not gonna. Yeah, there we go.
That's right.
Right out of the sideboard, right into the graveyard. Look, played perfectly. I'm all about Frilled Mystic. Just
Sometimes you just get outmaneuvered by the top of your own library.
yeah.
Put cards in your deck to draw them, you know?
Jim debating if he wants to bring that Teferi up to 4, or whether he's bouncing, getting rid of the Planeswalker. Have Aaron pick up one of the Wild Growth Walkers. Jim draws a land off it. Has 2 Command the Dreadhordes in hand. Not really at a point where I'd want to use it. Use Command the Dreadhorde.
No, bringing back just a Wild Growth Walker and a Teferi is underwhelming a bit.
And a Frilled Mystic.
How could I forget?
This feels like he's setting up for Command the Dreadhorde based on this attack. You know, Paradise Druid is just swinging away here.
Oh yeah, have you ever had someone look you in the eye and say, please block?
Yeah.
Please do not take this damage.
3, 6, 9, 12, 16 damage on the attack.
This is not insignificant. And there's a point where Erin's just doing her best to try and figure out what's the block you can make where you don't lose the game.
Ooh, that trade is going to be brutal.
It doesn't feel good. This does take away Davis's 6th mana source.
I don't know that he's played the land yet.
Well, look, I'm explaining why the block was made this way. Not necessarily saying it is correct.
And there's Command the Dreadhorde, everything coming back. And now it's a bunch of Explore triggers. That the Jade Light trading with the Branch Walker. So Jim, he's see, this is why, is he going to take the Frilled Mystic too? That's what I want to know.
I imagine so. Does he want to take 13 or 17 of his 32 life? That one's up to him.
So it's 16 damage off these creatures. But wait, he explores 3 times. So he only ends up taking a net 7. He'll be at 25 when this is done, and then he'll get to explore 3 times, get it to Teferi, and he can counter a spell.
It's a May.
Right.
Do you think he missed the trigger?
It's just it goes away, right? There's nothing for it to target.
I believe this Teferi should have 4 counters.
And,
all right.
And Aaron, she shows the hand. A bunch of 4-mana plays, and that's going to do it. A commanding 2-0 here for Jim. This deck's impressive. And when it finds it's in a mid-range metagame, this is a monster of a deck list.
Yeah, this is the spot where you're just going to go so far over the top of anything the opponent does. And,
yeah.
We were ragging on Frilled Mystic before, but I actually think that game, Mana Screw aside, kind of showed why that card is a little bit awkward.